Good evening, everybody. Here, and I thought rather after 7. Welcome to this regular council meeting. Thank you. Welcome to the regular council meeting, April 4th, 2024. I'd like to acknowledge that we're holding this on the traditional lands of the Klama Nation. I'm going to start with announcements. We'll start with Councillor Palm and work our way around.
Yes, Your Worship, no announcement tonight.
So Elliot.
Just that most of council and the regional district folks will be away, not this weekend, but next one, because we're all going to be attending the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Convention in Victoria.
Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to mention that April is Earth Month, but I think we're going to have a declaration about that later on in a couple of weeks, perhaps. Thank you.
Councillor Doat.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No announcements tonight.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wesno. Don't have anything prepared, but I am reminded that tomorrow is Treaty Day for Tla'amin Nation, so it's the anniversary of treaty implementation. And congratulations to their government for ongoing work on implementing that treaty. It will take decades, and they're doing great work so far.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. It looks like council has left everything for me to announce today, so I'll take the reins on that. So if you did not get your hockey fix in last week during the wonderful Koi Cup week, I would like to introduce and invite everyone to our 3rd annual Battle of the Badges happening this coming Saturday, where our fire department will face off against the police department. The fire department trying to take back some pride after a tough loss last year. I will be doing my best to keep the forces at bay. I'm still hoping for someone to throw a stick for a penalty shot, Chief. So you know that I'd like to see that. So everything's for charity. It's all going to the Cops for Cancer and the Firefighters Charitable Society. So it should be a great event. We have 2 Canuck alumni that are going to be in attendance, and I heard yesterday are actually playing. I thought they were just coming to watch, but no, they're actually playing. And Finn, the Canucks mascot, is there, so bring the kids to get a picture with Finn, the whale. So it should be a great time. Several thousand were raised last year, so it should be a fun event. Tickets are just $5. You can get them at the fire hall or at the police station, or just come in at the door and do that as well. Also, next weekend, April 12th to 14th is the Townsite Jazz Festival. So you can see information there on townsitejazz.com. They've got a whole lineup of things. In fact, in the midweek paper today, there was a big write-up on it as well, so you can read it over there. And lastly, not completely community related at all, but very Canadian related. Next Thursday is National Poutine Day. And I felt, you know, as maybe an official Canadian food, it's worthy of a mention. And we actually have 10 places in town that you can get a poutine at. So I'm actually sad that I'm traveling that day to Victoria, so I won't be able to take part in a local poutine before I leave. But I'm sharing the word so that others can take part in National Poutine Day. So.
Quick question. What time's the hockey game on Saturday?
Oh, thank you, Councillor. The hockey game is 6 p.m. at the complex on Saturday. I do have a couple of tickets for a few lucky people in our audience today. If you want one, come see me after the meeting or during the break.
Thank you. Well, with regard to the hockey game on Saturday, I checked it out. The Vegas odd makers have the Fire team 6-4 odds. So if anybody likes to bet on the game, you know what the odds are. And also with regard to the Jazz Festival, one of my favorite activities, you do not have to wear a 1930 zoot suit to participate in that, but it is very much appreciated if you can dress accordingly. So, with that, we'll go to the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move adoption.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Good evening. Did you miss the odds? We have no delegations. We'll move to correspondence.
3.1 minute adoption.
Oh, thank you very much. The adoption of the minutes. I was focusing too much on the Vegas odd makers. We have an adoption of the minutes. Yes.
I can move adoption of the regular council meeting held March 21st, 2024.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Passed unanimously. We'll now move to correspondence. 5.1 is the proclamation of the National Volunteer Week, April 14th. And I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas a significant portion of the Canadian population, totaling 24 million individuals, dedicate their time to various forms of volunteering, contributing an impressive number of nearly 5 billion volunteer hours annually. And whereas within the community of Powell River, volunteers serve as mentors to our youth, provide support to those experiencing isolation, enhance the beauty of our natural spaces, and engage in fundraising efforts for charitable causes. And whereas volunteers have exhibited remarkable resilience by offering aid to families, friends, neighbors, and even strangers, while also advocating against systemic injustices and promoting discussions aimed at fostering a more equitable society. And whereas the volunteers in Powell River represent a diverse array of individuals, including families, workers, retirees, and community members of all ages and backgrounds. And whereas the collective effort of our city's volunteers significantly contribute to making Powell River a more vibrant and desirable place to reside. Now therefore, I, Ron Wasno, Mayor of the City of Powell River, do hereby proclaim April 14th to 20th, 2024, as National Volunteer Week in the City of Powell River. We'll now move to item 5.2, which is a proclamation, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, April 17th, 2024. Whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was enacted 42 years ago on April 17, 1982, and forms part of the Canadian Constitutional Act, 1982. Whereas the Charter recognizes the inherent dignity and equality of all people, right to life, liberty, and security of all Canadians, and recognition of Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples of Canada. Whereas the Charter guarantees everyone's fundamental freedoms of conscience, religion, thought, belief, opinion, expression, peaceful assembly, and association that allows our democracy, our democratic society to flourish. Therefore, I, Ron Wasno, Mayor of the City of Powell River, hereby proclaim April 17th, 2024 as Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms Day in the City of Powell River. We'll now move to item 8, which is reports for decision. 8.1, Office of the Fire Commission Level of Service Declaration.
No, I just wanted to inform you of the penalties for gambling within council. The penalties is spotting the fire department 2 points.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our Deputy Chief, Rocky Swanson. He's in charge of training. He'll be presenting the report tonight.
Thank you.
Check one, sibilance. Sorry. I always wanted to try that.
Council and Mayor, excuse me if I get some of the language wrong. I don't speak up here very often, so I apologize. I am here this evening and very happy to be here. Hello, everybody that's here. I figured it would be a small crowd because it's beautiful out. Basically, I'm here to, because of the report to council, report for decision on the training standards set out by the BC Fire Commissioner's Office. And this is a standard that was set out, really, they started this 20 years ago, and there's been multiple iterations of this. And the latest iteration requires that the council declare this level of service by May of 2024. So we're right on deadline. And Powell River Fire Rescue more than exceeds the standards, and we have for many years. This is simply declaration from the council stating that this is the standards that's expected of us, and that it holds people like myself accountable.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead. I don't know if I should read the whole report. I assumed that you had read it. So
I'm going to ask if there are questions. Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Rocky. So it's curious to me, the legislation or the requirement to do this came out quite a while ago, but the deadline is not until now, and I've never seen this come before us before. So can you help us understand why are we doing this now and not before?
Well, I think in the past, that's a good question, actually. I've asked that question myself. So the first deadline for this was actually back in June of 2016. It was a different program altogether. It was called the BC Firefighters Playbook, and they were more concerned with small, tiny departments out in the country. I spoke to the BC Fire Commissioner at the time. I wasn't even in the department at the time, but later on when I was hired, this came up. And they weren't overly concerned with our department and this kind of thing. And I spoke to the CAO at the time, Russell Brewer, and he was happy with where we were at. So I think there were multiple reasons. I can't answer for everybody.
Mac Fraser, you mean?
Nope, Russell Brewer.
In 2016?
Well, no, I spoke to Russell Brewer later.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I'm not laying that on him. It was, I spoke to one of the fire commissioners at the time asking, hey, does this have to be done right away? And they weren't overly concerned with us. They were really focusing on tiny little departments out in the country.
Oh, okay.
These standards now have expanded. They're much more extensive. There's 14 competencies for the very basic standard that's called exterior fire service. That's the most basic, and there's 14 competencies within that. The next level of service is called interior, and that basically allows our firefighters to actually enter a burning structure and rescue our residents, right? Without that standard, we cannot do that, right? So these are very, very basic minimums. And so those standards have now been refined. And last year, no, it was 2022. 2022, that standard really changed, okay. And it really began affecting departments like ours. So I think that basically answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wesno. Through the chair, I'm wondering, you mentioned interior allows firefighters to go into a burning building and rescue residents. What is the difference between that and full service level?
Yeah, good question. So full service, again, there's multiple competencies here. So to answer that simply put, there's some of those competencies in the full service level allow us building inspections and hazardous materials at a higher level, those kinds of responses. So.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you for bringing this to us. With my past in ambulance, competencies are so important, both from the standpoint of safety and, for the service providers, but also for service for the community. And I know there's been an evolution over many years. So it seems like a turning point to get to a point where this level of competency can be declared. And that gives me a real sense of pride, even though I was in a different service, in years before, but I think there's this very close relationship. So just one question, and that is, I'm assuming and expect that there's no difference between the training for full-time career firefighters and paid on calls. Did you have a consistent level of expectation across the board there?
Right. So I think I'm supposed to say through the chair. So my apologies if I wasn't saying that. So to answer that question, yeah, these standards are identical. And even if they weren't, we wouldn't allow there to be a difference in that standard.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, and I have to say that in the country and throughout North America, these are some of the more robust, precise standards that are very clearly articulated by the BC Fire Commissioner's Office, and this has been I would say a real joint effort between all the fire chiefs in the province working with the BC Fire Commissioner's Office to bring about these standards. And it is I think a real point of pride for the province, because when you compare these standards to any other territory in the nation, we stand far ahead.
Staff has provided us with a recommendation. Would somebody like to formalize with a motion? Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Worship. I will move that council declares the City of Powell River Fire Department service level as full service, and further that the staff provide this declaration of service by way of certified resolution to the Office of the Fire Commissioner in advance of May 2024 deadline.
Seconded by Councillor Elliott. All in favor?
Could I ask another question?
Oh,
If it pleases the chair?
please.
Thank you so much.
You were seconding then.
I don't mind, and I like the motion. I do still have a question, though. So my question is, we are declaring a competency, and that means that our fire department must meet that competency level. My question is, do we currently meet the level that we are declaring?
100%. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, Councillor.
Worship, just before we vote on this, I just want to share one thing with the two officers that are here tonight. When I was at the game on Saturday, I ran into one of our full-time firefighters who I used to coach when he was 17 years old at Brooks on our soccer team. He was a goaltender. And very nice guy, great guy. And I just said, well, how are things going these days? And I guarantee you, he assured me that from the volunteers right up to the chief and his deputy, the staff sounds like they are very happy with the way things are going in our fire department. I was very happy to hear that, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right, with regard to, yes.
Sorry, excuse me, through the chair, I would like to add to my answer to your question. So those standards, do we meet the standards? Yes. Okay. But these are constantly evolving. I will be back here at some point, I'm sure, to ask for something else in the way of standards one day, right? Because these are evolving constantly. And anytime we bring in recruits, those recruits, of course, start at zero and they don't meet any standard until we get them through the training. So when I say 100% of our staff who have been trained are at that standard.
So I've been to the fire hall and I've seen that little chart on the wall with the training and things filled in. So the training meets the standard as soon as everybody gets through is what you mean?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to call the motion now. All in favor? And passed unanimously. We'll now move to 8.2, which is the Powell River Community Forest, appointment of directors and authorized representatives. And I believe the Deputy Corporate Officer is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report is fairly self-explanatory. We do this every year for the Community Forest AGM, appointing the board members and a representative from council. So the recommendation is as it is in the report.
Councillor Doudt, did you have a question? Okay, thank you. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe this is a question for Mayor Wasno, as you are the council representative on the board. Can you speak to what is the board, the three members that are being put forward tonight are reappointments. They already sit on the board, but what is the board recruitment process? How can the public get involved in the future if they're interested in sitting on the board? What does that process look like?
They can send a note to the board chair. They can send a note to our CAO and ask that be forwarded to the.
Thank you.
Okay. We have the recommendations laid out. Would somebody like to make the motion? Thank you, Councillor Elliott.
I move that Bill Bird, Mark Hassett, and Janet May be appointed as directors of Powell River Community Forest Limited for a 3-year term effective April 9th, 2024.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you. And there's a subsequent motion there also, if somebody would like to make it. Councillor Isaacson.
I move that Mayor Wasno be confirmed as a duly authorized representative for the City of Powell River as the sole shareholder in order to vote at the annual general meeting of Powell River Community Forest Limited, scheduled to be held April 9th, 2024, with Councillor Palm as an alternate representative.
Thank you. Thank you. We have moved and seconded. No discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We now move to item 9, which is reports for information. We have the Indigenous Engagement Requirements, the Emergency and Disaster Management Act funding program.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this report is a report for information. We've provided with an opportunity to apply for a grant provided by the province to enhance relations with our neighbors with regards to emergency management. We are currently working on another project through the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund that brought forward when I was away on vacation. Those two projects are somewhat intertwined, where one is focused on physical aspects of what's required. This one is more of relationship building, creating culturally safe spaces between entities, so that if there is a urgency in the region, that we have one or two spaces to be able to provide that per site for service. The relationship building that is required to make that possible is well.
Thank you. Hey, Councillor Elliott.
So I have a question. The application that's going forward for a grant, does it require a motion from council in support?
Yeah, through the chair, if I might answer, this is actually more of a contribution agreement. Every municipality in BC is getting an allocated amount to support implementing an act that came into place, the Emergency Disaster Management Act, which requires Indigenous engagement. So Cathet Regional District is also getting some funding, we're getting funding. And so it's why it's coming to you for information is because we're basically getting the contribution automatically on the condition that we just sign some documents that we as staff are authorized to sign and submit. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Doat.
Yeah, and since emergency management and disaster situations are generally dealt with by the entire region, both the Willamette Nation, the regional district, and the city, are all three governments coordinating this, or is this just an effort between the city and the Willamette Nation?
Through the chair, the intention is to collaborate between all three. And in fact, we actually have a letter of support or an email of support that we submitted with the contribution agreement from Tla'amin. So they are aware that we're getting the funding. They have actually worked with the chief to determine some initial steps on how to engage better. And in fact, kudos to the chief, even prior to us getting this contribution, these efforts were already starting through the fire services and also through Cathet. Thank you.
We have a recommendation from staff. Would somebody like to read that? Councillor Isaacs.
Move that council receives the report titled Indigenous Engagement Requirements, Emergency and Disaster Management Act Funding Program for information.
By Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Now move to our favorite item, which is the report from municipal directors of the Cathett Regional District. Who would like to start? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just had our regional district meeting yesterday. We had lovely alternate Director Southcott sitting in for Director Doubt, since Dr. Doubt is at a conference. And it was a very short meeting, but we did have a couple of things that happened. We decided to support a letter to Let's Talk Trash and Ocean Legacy Foundation to support for an application for a shoreline cleanup operation. And so if that application is successful, we could have some shoreline cleanup happening in our region. The Texada Airport lease update was sent back to the advisory committee for their one more review before decisions, simply because the recommendation coming forward from the staff is slightly different than what the advisory committee had recommended, and we wanted them to have one last chance to review it before we made a decision. We received a report regarding review of rural housing solutions, and there was some discussion around that, but it was received for our information. And that was pretty much our regional district meeting yesterday.
Any further comments from Councillor Southcott or Councillor Doubt? Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 10, bylaw 2754, 2024, development procedures.
Would you like me to read the motion? Did you want to say anything, or should we just start with the motion?
Through the chair, you've had a bit of background on this. If you've got any questions, we've got Ms. Ferguson here to respond. Thank you.
Please, Councillor Elliott, would you read the...
I move that City of Pearl River Development Procedures Bylaw 2745, 2024 be read a first time.
Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. That passed unanimously.
I move that City of Pearl River Development Procedures Bylaw 2745, 2024 be read a second time.
Councillor Almeida is seconded. All in favor?
Oops.
Passed unanimously.
I move that City of Pearl River Development Procedure Bylaw 2745, 2024 be read a third time.
Councillor Almeida has seconded that. All in favor?
Well, I just was going to speak to the whole, if I was going to explain to the public what the bylaw was.
All right.
So, yeah, for the benefit of the public, this is a change in a bylaw to bring us into compliance with the province's Bill 44 regarding prohibition of holding public hearings during times of mainly zoning changes and so forth. Where we used to be have public hearings in those cases, we will not be having them now. And so our bylaw has had to come into compliance prior to a certain deadline in order to meet the terms of Bill 44.
Councillor Isaacs.
Yeah, just one additional comment, and I'll look to staff to confirm what I'm sharing is that it's not that any rezoning, there will not be a public hearing, but if an application aligns with the official community plan, if there's already been broad public consultation and there's been a plan that's been approved at council and an application is in alignment with that, then a public hearing is prohibited in those cases. I'm looking into staff. Is that? Don't want to mislead the public.
That sounds right.
Through the chair, yes, thank you. That's the gist of it. They've created situations where a public hearing is prohibited. Yes, as you said, that it's in alignment with an official community plan, and the rezoning is related to housing. And there's some cases where council may have a public hearing, and some where it would continue as usual. And so this development procedures bylaw allows for that to happen, and is in preparation for a rezoning where a public hearing is prohibited.
Thank you. Councillor Pong.
Thank you, Worship. So just to make this clear for the public, I just want to run something by staff, and that is because there is no longer the need for a public hearing in most of these cases, when the public sees a redevelopment signage go up in their neighborhood, they should inquire as to the nature of those changes going on in their vicinity. Isn't that correct? It will be posted in the paper, I understand.
Through the chair, yes. So the public can expect to see signage go up. We're intending to do a better job with our signage, so it's more clear, maybe more exciting looking about the rezoning that's proposed. The members of the public are more than welcome, as always, to come into the planning department or give us a call and inquire about what's happening in their neighborhood. And they, of course, can send correspondence to council. So even though there won't be a public hearing, they're welcome to send in correspondence through the regular correspondence channels and provide their feedback that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion which has been seconded. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to 10.2, which is bylaw 2748, 2024, dealing with business license. Councillor Isaacson.
I move that City of Powell River Business License Bylaw 2226, 2010, Amendment Bylaw 2748, 2024 be read a first time. And if there's a seconder, I'll do that public explanation piece.
We have a second.
Thank you. This is similar to the previous one. This gets us into alignment with provincial legislation, specifically legislation related to short-term rentals. And now that within municipalities, or within most municipalities, short-term rentals only being allowed in a primary residence and not an investment property. And so previous to this, there were only 10 such licenses, I believe, that had been available through the city for that to happen, and that will no longer be the case, but short-term rentals are still allowed in one short-term rental license is available for primary residences, but this gets us in line with new provincial legislation.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. And staff might need to correct me if I'm incorrect on this, but I believe this particular bylaw is specific to municipalities and not as much for regional districts, or at least the Cathet Regional District. And I know sometimes our boundaries get confused. And I'm just wanted to make sure it's out there in the public in case someone in the public says, well, hey, my friend down the road rents out their house and they don't live in it. But if they're in the regional district, that this does not necessarily apply to them provincially, right?
Through the in certain circumstances, in regions where tourism is popular or cities are much larger, but here in Cathet, the regional district is not included in this principal residence requirement. The regional district could opt in, but it's not required to.
We have a motion. See no further discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that City of Powell River Business License Bylaw 2226, 2010, Amendment Bylaw 2748, 2024 be read a second time.
Councillor Almeida. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that City of Powell River Business License Bylaw 2226, 2010, Amendment Bylaw 2748, 2024 be read a third time.
Second by Councillor Almeida. All in favor? Passed unanimously. There's also a further recommendation. Councillor Elliott.
I can read that. I believe I voted in favor the last time. Or do we know whether that's an issue in this particular case?
Through the chair, everyone voted in the affirmative, so anyone can move to rescind. And just for clarity, the motion you're rescinding, the only difference is that the motion said that directed staff to give notice of council's intent to consider first reading. It should actually be noticed of council's intent to consider adoption. So we're rescinding that incorrect motion. It's just a correction. Thank you.
Thank you. So I move that members of the committee direct staff, because we were a committee at the time? Oh, okay, that's the, okay. Thank you. I recommend that council rescind the motion passed at the March 19th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting that read that members of the committee direct staff to issue notice of council's intent to consider first reading of City of Pearl River Business License Bylaw 2226, 2010 Amendment Bylaw 2748, 2024, pursuant to Community Charters Section 59.2 at a future meeting of council.
Further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
And I could read the replacement motion. I move that council direct staff to issue notice of council's intent to consider adoption of City of Pearl River Business License Bylaw 2226, 2010 Amendment Bylaw 2748, 2024, pursuant to Community Charters Section 59.2 at a future meeting of council.
In favor? Councillor Doubt, are you voting on that motion?
Your sound has been cutting out, Mr. Mayor, so I didn't hear you call for a vote.
Oh, sorry. I will call for the vote again on that motion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now go to 11, which is unfinished business. 11.1 is the temporary use permit 010, excuse me, 7339 Duncan Street. Councillor Almeida.
I'll go ahead and move the recommendation. This was, well, I'll read it first. I can back it up afterwards, but I move that council issue temporary use permit TUP number 010 to allow commercial recreation and entertainment use on 7339 Duncan Street, legally described as Lot 9 of Lots 33 and 34, Block 7, District 7, Lot 5731, Plan 9055.
Yeah, and an extra 7, but other than that, it was good.
We have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Palm. Councillor Armida.
Yeah, and just for members of the members of the community, sorry, there we go, who might have missed a meeting a couple weeks ago. This is a temporary use permit for a facility just down the road from the airport next to Custom Flooring. I believe it's been vacant for the last couple of years, and we have a gentleman in town who's going to turn it into a sports and recreation and entertainment training facility. So it'd be great to see a building get some use and provide some both sports training and some recreation and entertainment to our community as well.
Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you, Mayor. A question for staff through the chair about any public input that the planning department received in relationship to public notice on this.
Through the chair, no correspondence has been received. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call the motion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Questions, Mr. Galinsky? I hope that's recorded in the next edition of the Peak. Any questions from our packed audience? Seeing none? Oh, yes. Please come forward.
Hello, Robin Murray here. I'd like to a couple of questions. First is regarding the proclamation number 5.2, the one that I had requested with Mr. Peckford. It was read out differently than what I had sent in. I wanted to find out why that was, please.
Could you assist us by pointing out the difference?
On my letter that I sent in, there's a whole section that was asked for.
Oh. Going to direct this to our corporate officer, our deputy corporate officer.
I can look into that, Mr. Murray, and follow up with you in council. I'm not sure at this very moment why the discrepancy.
Yeah, I had wanted it changed from what it was last year. It sounded, when you read it out, it sounded like last year's. So the reason I asked is punctuation matters. And Mr. Peckford, he's been talking about the charter and how it's referred to a lot. And it was missing, I'll read it out here. I'm not sure the rest of it, but whereas Canada is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law, comma, and then everything follows after that. The preamble in the charter is a very important part of the charter, and is often disregarded. There's a lot of disregard for the rule of law, and we were just trying to reinforce that by having that in our request.
Thank you.
We could maybe change that for the future, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. The other part is, this is regarding 10.1 bylaws. Bill 44. Bill 44, 46, and 47, I had written council at the when this first came to light at the end of November, beginning of December, and had quite some concerns about it because there was quite a few people who were having concerns about them. And I see that there's going to be no public engagement as long as things go along with the community, what is it called? The community...
Official community plan.
Official community plan.
That's the one. Thank you. Sorry. So from what I understand, I was happy to watch the other day and see that we're going to keep to the 27-foot high height restriction. We're not going to go to the 33, which the provincial government wanted, and we're not going to have the 6 units, thankfully, on a city property, but we can have upwards of 4. Now, when we moved to town here, we walked the entire town. We loved it. We still love it. It's a fabulous area. But our greatest fear is that with these, I understand that the city is a creature of the provincial government, and you have to do what you're told. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. But this is why I raised this back in December, is so people would have looked into it and contacted the government and said that there's people that probably won't be too happy with our neighbors changing into. I've seen this happen in Squamish. I've seen it happen in Vancouver, the Surrey, and all these other places. The real developments, there's so many more. The nice, quiet neighborhoods become not nice, quiet neighborhoods. And I just have this fear, and a lot of people that I've talked to have this fear of somebody buying the house next door, the one across the street, and either bulldozing it or lifting it, putting another suite in there, and then putting another house in the back. So now we've got 4 suites, or we bulldoze it and we have a 4-plex put in.
I'm going to ask our CAO to respond.
Through the chair to Mr. Murray, you raise an interesting point, and one that has been raised not only by the City of Powell River, but other municipalities, including through joint organizations like the Union of BC Municipalities. And it's more around the needs of smaller cities and communities who have different housing needs, different impacts and infrastructure compared to larger cities. This legislation is based on some work that came out of New Zealand, a primary city called Auckland, and has been adapted to BC. And the provincial government, in an attempt to look at affordable housing across all communities over a certain size, I think, Ms. Ferguson, it's 5,000, yep, has been applying this. And many planners and others have provided feedback. And the provincial government is attempting to see if this will make a dent. And so this has big impacts for us in terms of a community where our official community plan, we've typically had more of a say in how it's implemented. However, I'll defer to Mr. Gow's presentation where he said we currently allow up to 3 units in Powell River, and we haven't seen that occur. So in Powell River, in most residential areas, you can have a secondary suite and a carriage home, and we've yet to see that uptake. That's not to say it won't happen, but we're not seeing, even with our current regulations, never mind the 4 that's required, a dramatic increase. And there are other pieces and ways, and Ms. Ferguson may be able to speak to this, where we can look at the sensitivity, particularly around neighborhoods and their character in terms of the form and design. Ms. Ferguson, I don't know if you can speak to other measures we can take around this when it occurs, but you're right, it's a tricky one for us.
Sorry, Councillor Isaacs.
I believe Manager Planner Ferguson was going to add anything to add. You grabbed the microphone.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, CAO. There are ways that we can mitigate impacts, and Mr. Murray, as he pointed out, one is height. And so staff presented that we considered what the province is recommending that we do, and we adapt it for our local conditions. Another one is setbacks. So the planner one spoke on Tuesday about how even if there are more units on a lot, we can still have the setbacks so the street feels the same. When you're walking down the street, there's not bigger buildings that are closer to the street in our single detached neighborhoods. And we can also use development permit guidelines to look at things like shading, overlook, privacy, private outdoor spaces for different units to help mitigate those impacts.
The reason that I raised my hand, though, through the chair is just to correct one thing. So it's not that it will stop public engagement, it's just public hearings. And so there's still a variety of ways of notice and the public being able to write council, and but it's the public hearing piece that this legislation is most pointed on.
Mr. Murray, I would point out that there is a provincial election in September, and anybody that shares this concern could let all of the candidates know in our riding that this is a concern. Thank you.
Thank you. I will.
Any other questions from the audience? Anybody online? Okay. Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
I move that council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under sections 90, part 1, C, labor relations or other employee relations, G, litigation or potential litigation affecting a municipality, and I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Going in camera.
Going in camera.